into his presence, into his bedside. But around them, there is a whole group of people, particularly Mr. Navalny's aide.
Looks like somebody who's been either blowing the whistle or talking too much has suspected poisoning and on the verge of fucking threat of his life of death for speaking out about something. Don't know about this guy.
Speak on behalf of that team. At the moment, it's primarily his aide, who, as I say, was on the flight with
Russian opposition leader collapsed after drinking tea.
Intending to fly back to Moscow, but when,
how many times has this happened?
She felt so very sick, so very suddenly, and she's been the main person who's been passing.
Very aware of this, aren't we? Us folks who
deep concerns that
are open to the bullshit of what goes on this fucking planet. Many people go missing, get poisoned, and drop fucking dead, mysteriously die.
Thanks so much. And let us
when you oppose the fucking globalists.
Who was British ambassador to Moscow between 2004 and 2008. Thanks so much for talking to us. Your reflections at this rather confusing moment?
I have to say that the
confusing, bit more than confusing when a guy's fucking life's on the line, isn't it?
And this is the first I heard on your show that the hospital have now said it's unlikely to be poisoning. Listening to the account, if they'd wanted to dismiss the story completely, they would have done so. Instead of which, he very carefully said, we're keeping the possibility open, but there's no trace of it.
Okay, now he done a little well there, does he?
I'm inclined to believe what the hospital is saying. Firstly, that there's no evidence so far, but they'll carry on looking for it. And secondly, that Navalny is too sick to travel.
And that then creates a problem for everybody, I suppose, because there's so little
you know for a fact no one will be fucking working trying to save his life.
And family and
there'll be people there who fucking the culprit's likely not far away, making sure that he gets no fucking hardly any treatment. Make sure he fucking croaks it, because they're going to want the end desire, aren't they?
Each other. Navalny's team have very good reasons to mistrust and to detest the output of the Russian authorities. Navalny has had a very rough time in the past with the Russian authorities. You can fully understand why they're as worked up as they are. On the other hand, as I've said over the last couple of days, if you look at what the Russian governmental interest in all this is, the last thing that they want is for Navalny to die. Because if that happens, they're facing a huge eruption of domestic and international protest at precisely the time when Russian domestic morale is very low because of the virus and other things. Economic growth is stalled. They've got a hideous political problem dealing with the Belarus problem. So I suspect the charges which are inevitably going to come, and if Navalny dies will come, that the Kremlin is responsible.
What are they covering up?
In this particular case,
taping up a fucking camera.
And yet, in a way, we should examine why people should or might jump to the conclusion, because there is so much form in terms of, unfortunate events befalling critics of the regime.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I was ambassador at the time that Alexander Litvinenko was murdered, and I sort of went through it and saw the evidence in that particular case.
She says it, people may jump to a conclusion as though it's fucking wrong and you shouldn't be doing it.
But they are more politically astute when it comes to dealing with their own domestic opposition. Boris Nemtsov, who was a friend of mine, was a politician who was killed a few years ago outside the Kremlin. The world instantly deduced that it was the Kremlin who had done it. Actually, the evidence is now pretty strong that it was done by Karimov, who's the rather nasty boss of Chechnya, against whom Nemtsov was preparing a dossier. For the Russian authorities,
he's openly admitted that this sort of behaviour goes on.
But the opposition is not a serious threat.
People get poisoned and fucking murdered.
Convincingly a referendum which in effect now makes him president for life if he wants to be that. The bulk of the Russian people are behind him. They have the security apparatus to repress those who are not. People like Nemtsov and Navalny are an irritant, but they become much more of a challenge and a threat if they become martyrs, i.e. if they are killed. So the Kremlin interest is in them being around, in them making noise, but not becoming martyrs.
And so going back to the difficult judgment calls for those inside that hospital in Omsk, there's a German air ambulance waiting. Arguably, if he was and when he is fit to travel, they might want to put him on there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if they can make him fit to travel, they'll be delighted for him to go off somewhere. They want him cured, finally.
Fucking hell, man.
Giving
an interview and he didn't turn his phone off.
Annoying though he is as an opponent, he would be much more...
Great when you see it live, isn't it?
If he became a martyr.
So Tony Brent, we'll leave it there.
That was perfect.
Thank you.
People arriving in the UK from Portugal will no longer need to quarantine for 2 weeks, but travellers returning from Croatia or from Austria or Trinidad and Tobago, well, they will have to self-isolate.
What fucking difference does it make?
After 4 a.m. on Saturday. Simon Jones reports.
What fucking country it is?
Portugal looks set to get
should be fucking no quarantine, really.
The country has been added to the UK's safe travel list.
Look at this,
coronavirus cases there fall. Last year,
I applaud all this people going about the business normal, apart from the mask wearers.
To the Portuguese community in the UK and to British visitors, welcome back. But holiday firms are warning it won't be enough
Beaches
to save for summer.
jam-packed, and yet you can't even go in your own paper shop without a fucking told you've got to wear a mask. And you might be the only one who walks in there.
In the way that it has been used.
The absurdity of all the fucking measures is beyond belief, as we know.
And from 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, anyone visiting Croatia, Austria and Trinidad and Tobago will now have to quarantine for 14 days when they reach the UK. It follows a rise in the rate of coronavirus infections.
Yet again, coronavirus knows times and dates, doesn't it? From 4 o'clock.
To which the Foreign Office advises against all non-essential travel. In Croatia, there's sun, sea and now stress for those aiming to get home before the deadline.
Well, that's the idea. Cause ultimate stress.
Last weekend, and due to the quarantine on France, I changed my flight to...
stress affects people's immune system.
My daughter's fiancé and his family all live here, but she booked me a flight home tomorrow in case this did happen.
Many of the 20,000 British tourists in Croatia will also be heading to the airport. Others, though, are resigned to isolation when they return to the UK.
I think we'll just stay and then
fucking
go
hell.
back and then have to quarantine.
And with the British government prepared to add or remove countries...
That's it, pal. Put your name down. Put your name down.
It's not the easiest time for those looking to get away from it all.
Name, details, address, phone number. Shaft yourself for track and trace.
And she told me the UK should take a more regional approach to travel restrictions.
If the UK government was willing to look at our separate regions and make decisions,
avoid the track and trace like the fucking plague.
We would have been in a much better position because
mind you, we're in a plague now, aren't we? So we're told.
Most of the regions are actually doing pretty well. So
like some people on the BBC have said, we're in a war zone.
Asian numbers are very high is not actually correct. There's the majority.
Hospitals are like war zones.
Very, very safe.
Well, our political correspondent Helen Catt explained.
Well, it wasn't the one I fucking walked through 2 weeks ago.
Decisions.
We have now seen this pattern over recent weeks of
fucking gutted I didn't take my camera with me.
List of exemptions. So France, Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands, all of those now needing to quarantine if you come back from there. The decision to take the restrictions, to lift restrictions on quarantine from Portugal, though, is the most significant.
But was stopped from going in the hospital for the second time when I went to pick up my friend who'd had
but it has come right at the end
an operation
of the summer season. So you heard some of the questions there in Simon's report about the timing. And if you just think
I was hoping, I took my camera back with me second time, hoping go in and walk through, but I was stopped from entering the second time. And yet, first time I was walking up and down the corridor, when I went in with the first time, no questions asked. So it can't be that bad that you can't be allowed in when no one questions you the first time, can it?
Travel industry to some extent, but because we've seen the volatility and how things can change so quickly, and the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps reinforcing in a tweet last night,
there was no rushing about in there, as I saw with my own visual eyes.
To quarantine for 14
no
days
panic.
Anywhere. There have
people walking around with no masks, staff.
Alternatives to that, and one of the things that comes up a lot is this idea of testing at the airport. Now, the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has said they are looking at that, they're interested in it, but it's not as simple as it might sound.
If you test somebody on day one when they come to the country, it may only find, these figures of course debated and disputed by scientists and medical experts.
Scientists, what do they know, these scientists, when they're fucking working for corruption?
In other words, people who don't know the
And he's obviously on the dark side of scrote, this guy, isn't he?
You probably need to test on day 8 potentially to get to a very high percentage. You don't need
other scientists who were working for the WHO Foundation,
taken up quite a lot of time.
those who were a part of Event 201, a global pandemic exercise,
however, it is something that we are very interested in, and
which has now become living reality.
Reliably.
Now, another idea that's been suggested
A perfect mirror image of the exercise.
So that a country which have a lower rate of infection could be exempted.
But we're all just conspiracy theorists, aren't we, for thinking that?
Move around. But he said the government
tin pot heads, aren't we, all of us?
To see if that could be done, perhaps.
We're stupid. We can't connect the dots.
When quarantine was reimposed on Spain, for example, because the infection rates were much lower in the Balearics and in the Canary Islands. So these things are being looked at, and I think the pressure is going to stay on the government to look at other alternatives to quarantine.
Helen Katz. Well, let's
pressure on the government. There is no pressure on the fucking government. They're fucking laughing the balls off, fucking implementing all the measures what they're doing.
I'm sorry you two are stuck. Tell us your story. You have
from the higher powers that be, those at the top of the pyramid.
So we were hoping to come home on Sunday, and when they announced last night, we did try and book some flights, but we couldn't get any direct flights into Northern Ireland any sooner, or anywhere else in the UK by the time we'd looked at those. So we've sort of resigned ourselves that we're staying here and having to quarantine.
And so what will the impact be? Because obviously you'll be getting back after 4 a.m. tomorrow. You will have to quarantine. Emma, you
smile on her face, that girl then talking. What's fucking buzzing about being forced to quarantine against your will?
Starting my final year of medical school.
By your government that you elected. What's funny about that? Look at a bit of a smile on her face.
The university trying to make arrangements.
What's funny about that?
But I'm not sure what impact that's going to have on the rest of the year.
And in terms of your actual studies, will it make an impact, or would that have been virtual anyway? I mean, can you do that just as well from quarantine?
So some of it will be virtual, but some of it would have been ward placements and hospital placements, which, given the quarantine guidelines, I won't be able to do. So I'll have to probably make that up at some point over the next couple of weeks or months, I'd assume.
While they're on the news, why don't they take the opportunity to fucking say what they really feel while it's live?
Well, it's always a worry, but the region we're in is actually pretty safe. Like, most of the cases aren't here at all, and where we are, everyone's been really safe. Like, everyone's wearing masks. Every enclosed space you go into, there's sanitizer everywhere. Like, sometimes I'd feel safer here than I would in some places back in the UK.
God, yeah,
very, very safe here.
Sometimes we're very safe here. We're very safe here. There's a bogeyman virus everywhere else. We feel fucking safe here. Glad we're on holiday. Everyone's sanitising. Everyone's wearing a mask. Brilliant here.
As the risk of a second wave of coronavirus grows, countries across the globe have been setting out
pathetic little bitches
restrictions. So how do they compare with the UK's? Germany's 16 federal states have the final say on lockdown measures, and testing at airports there is now compulsory for all people coming from high-risk countries. In France, travellers with symptoms or
there is no high-risk countries.
The results of a virology test, well, they're required to quarantine. People from many nations outside Europe are
they've just got higher measures than any country.
Quarantine inside the EU.
And it's the measures what are implementing the more
by air, sea or land is required
worse rules, isn't it, really?
Whether or not they have symptoms of the virus. The United States, meanwhile, well, each
country's got different measures, haven't they?
Nationals who visited China, Iran, and a group of European countries
all following the same policy.
Previous 14 days. New Zealand, people entering that country required to quarantine for at least 14 days in an approved facility, and they also need to return a negative test.
And yet still, you go out your front door, you see nothing.
France has reported
I haven't seen one person drop down in front of me.
That's up by 1,000.
I've seen no one even looking fucking ill from a fucking virus.
Have been seen since May. In Spain, Germany and Italy, meanwhile, there are also high numbers of cases. They're recording records since April and May. The UK registered a further 1,182 cases on Thursday. Officials in the city of Birmingham are concerned that it could face tougher restrictions, a local lockdown even. It's after a steep rise in infections. They've doubled since
rubbish.
the start of this month. And the leader of Birmingham City Council described the increase
local lockdowns. That's the problem, folks.
And urged residents to pull together.
Local lockdowns, locking down locally, your area,
has risen above 2
anywhere where they fucking want.
As a result of the pandemic.
There is no pandemic.
Statistics said the government borrowed £26.7 billion in July alone. New figures this morning also show retail sales rose above pre-pandemic levels in July. A rebound in demand is continuing. Retail sales volumes rose by 3.6% between June and...
I'm Beau Biden, and Joe Biden is my dad.
And linking his own heart-wrenching story to the lives of millions of Americans.
Doesn't matter who you vote for.
Biden lost his son Beau.
They all singing from the same hymn sheet.
His first wife and young
the outcome is exactly the same.
43 years before that.
I have some idea how it feels to lose someone you love.
Don't matter who you vote for. You just spin your all the fucking bullshit, all the lies, all the sweet talk prior to fucking getting in, prior to getting elected.
Unfair life can be sometimes.
How many presidents have you seen pass through?
Background of cheering crowds,
and the world's not got any better, has it?
From largely empty.
You know how I see a president as every time they come in, just like a prime minister. They're just the next in line to carry the torch, to carry the baton.
This presidential campaign are shaping up to be one of the strangest ever. David Wallace, BBC News, Los Angeles.